Level 1 upgrade. Before I get to the upgrade, I have to give a major shout out to Coyote0976. He's the one who ended up donating me this Traxxas T-Maxx 2.5. Now it does have a couple of upgrades. I'm going to go ahead and cover those before we begin. In the front, it has the Traxxas T-Maxx aluminum skid plate. Now as you guys can see, I went ahead and de-anodized it and I buffed it out to make it silver. Underneath there, we have the steering bell cranks that have bearings now instead of bushings. Other than that, everything else on this RC is stock. And now for the upgrade. This is RPM's front bulkheads for the T-Maxx and E-Maxx. Guys, the bulkheads that are on there right now, well, one of them's been cracked and re-glued together and it's just not sitting right, so we need to go ahead and get this upgraded. And thanks to Coyote0976 donating this, we can go ahead and get it installed. Let's open it up. Gonna go ahead and pull off the top. And yep, I'm gonna have to cut this bag open. That's no problem. Snip it open, and there we have it, guys. The sides of the bulkhead. Believe me, I can't wait to get these in there. And of course, they include instructions, as well as some hardware. And we have, of course, their RPM stickers. So let's go ahead and get this installed. Now here's a little helpful hint before I begin. Put some paper towel into the exhaust. This will prevent it from leaking when you flip the RC over to work on it. Just remember to pull it out when you're done. So to make things a little easier for me, I'm going to go ahead and remove all four of the tires by undoing the one wheel nut that holds them on. Next up, I'm going to flip the RC over and remove the front skid plate. It's held on with 10 screws. Once those screws are out of the way, you can easily pull off the skid plate. Now you might have a little bit of trouble with the two screws that go into the steering bell cranks because these will rotate with the screw sometimes. You'll notice that they have a flat edge with them. You can just use some pliers to hold them still while you take out the screws. Next two screws I need to remove are these two that hook up the turnbuckles to the steering bell cranks. Once those are taken care of, I'm going to flip the RC back over, and then near the front of the chassis you'll notice that there's 4 screws holding it to the front assembly. I need to go ahead and take those out. Once those screws are taken care of, I can easily pull off the front assembly. Now it's time to go ahead and remove the front bumper. It's held in with 4 screws, 2 on this side and 2 on this side. Once those screws are out of the way, you can take off the front bumper as well as the center brace. And now it's time to go ahead and pull out all 4 of these spacers, as well as undoing the 4 kingpins that hold on the A-arms. Now if you don't have the kingpins that have the little E-clips on the end, you're going to have the pin screws. And all you have to do is unscrew them a little bit and then pull them out the rest of the way. There we go. And now it's time to remove the front shock tower. It's held in with 4 screws. Once those 4 are removed, you should be able to go ahead and pull off the A-arms now. And then we'll just set all that off to the side, and we finally reached the bulkheads. And as you can see, it was broken in half and it was glued back together and it just wasn't sitting right. But that's not the only break that I have to deal with. You can see that this brace right here, the 2 knobs that keep it spaced properly, was also broken. So I'm going to have to replace this first. And there you go, guys. I went ahead and I changed out the diff housing for a new one that Coyote0976 donated to me. Thanks again, man. Now as you can see, this one implements the 4 screw design. I guess it gives a little bit more support, but the more important thing is I have this brace. And guys, if you don't have this brace, the bulkhead is not going to sit right. But now that this has been taken care of, I can go ahead and do a quick comparison between the stock bulkhead and the RPM one. And you can see that this is one of the few times that the RPM part looks almost identical to the stock one. It doesn't look any meatier, it just pretty much looks the same. However, you do have that high quality plastic. So the first thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to slide it in on each side, just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and attach the rest of the assembly. So the first thing I'm going to want to do before I put any of this together is slide the drive shafts back into position. Once you get those aligned, they should slide right on in. Do that for both sides, and the first thing I'm going to do is reattach the front shock tower by using those 4 screws. After that, I need to go ahead and line up all the A-arms and then reinsert all of the pins. Now that those are taken care of, don't forget to put those spacers back in. And now it's time to go ahead and reinstall the front bumper. Remember when you do to put in the center brace. Now remember, once you reinsert the 4 screws that hold in the bumper, don't tighten them all the way down. You want the bumper to be able to absorb impact, and that means it has to move a little bit. Now it's time to go ahead and reinsert this onto the front of the chassis. But before I do, with the RPM front bulkhead, you'll see that there's these little grooves. These grooves are for 3mm nuts to be pushed into, just like that. Once those nuts are installed, it's time to go ahead and line up the front center drive line. Make sure it goes in. Once you get the center drive line inserted, you're going to flip the RC over, holding everything in place, and you're going to reinsert the 4 screws that tie in the bulkhead. Now remember, RPM includes 12 screws, short, medium, and long. We're going to be using the 4 shortest screws to attach the bulkhead to the chassis. However, if you have the T-Maxx, you're going to be using the medium-sized screws instead. Once those 4 screws are taken care of, you're going to flip the RC back on over, and then you're going to reattach the turnbuckles to the steering belt cranks using these 2 screws. Once that's taken care of, you can go ahead and reinstall the front skid plate. Now these back 6 screws, you're going to be using the original ones. However, for these front 4 ones, you're going to be replacing them with the longest screws that they included with this kit. Now you're not just going to be able to insert them and screw them down. You're going to have to slide in a 3mm nut that they include into that little groove. That way it'll lock the screw in place. And there you have it. You want the nut locked in just like that. I won't lie guys, these things were a pain to get in, especially the ones that are underneath the rear shock. If you want to, you can just remove the shock by removing the top and bottom screw. It'll give you better access to the nut that hides underneath it. Here's before, and here is after. You really cannot tell that I upgraded it, but believe me guys, I really did need this upgrade. Now the whole front bulkhead is sitting in there properly, and now I don't have to worry about anything else breaking. Thank you, Coyote, for this awesome upgrade. And that was Titan's level 1 upgrade.